Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order now. It is 6:37 p.m. on March 30th, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission. If the Spanish language interpreter, Joy, can please give the information on the Spanish language interpretation, please?
Yes. Esta es una reunión de la Comisión para la responsabilidad policial y las normas de la ciudad de Portland. Se grabará. La interpretación en español está disponible para esta reunión. Al acceder a la interpretación en español, verá la transmisión de vídeo de los oradores, pero la transmisión de audio será reemplazada por el intérprete. Para acceder a esto, haga clic en Interpretación de idiomas en los controles de la plataforma de Zoom, en la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccione Español.
Muchas gracias, José. Gracias. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Dennis and Kevin. Welcome. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance, but please note that this is an automatic captioning services and is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission, and it can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State Law, and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature as the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things. If attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meeting agenda topics. We like to be clear that no questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. Now, I will pass it to one of the commissioners to do the land acknowledgement.
Thank you very much. The PAC currently uses the land acknowledgement on display at City Hall. We acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the Lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past in working toward a more equitable and sustainable future for the Lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of the past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Now we're gonna review our community agreements. Remember, there is 3 pages. The Police Accountability Commission agrees to approach its work with honesty, openness, and willingness to work together to develop and achieve shared goals. The Commission will work with each other, city staff support, and external support to address issues as they arise, communicate openly, and meet each other's needs as part of working to meet the city's needs as a commission. All commission members, as well as city staff, support and external support, will abide by this agreement as we perform the duties and mandates of the commission. Now, each commissioner, please read these community agreements, and then we will review, and I ask the question at the end. Thank you. Next page, please. Thank you. Next page, please. Okay, thank you very much. Do we all commit to following the community agreements for today's meeting and to gently call in our college and collaborators if needed? Please show me your hands. You commit to these community agreements? Thank you very much. Now I will pass it over to the co-chairs to discuss the timeline. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Victoria. I'm Catherine McDowell. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the full commission co-chairs for this phase. And this phase is the structure and details phase of our work, where we are focusing on the form of the new system. The future phases of work ahead for us, the 5th and 6th phase, are really focused on the transition, and then really wrapping up our work and presenting it to the city government. And I'm just happy to say that we will work until, wait for it, August 31st, 2023. We have the extension now represented in our timeline since it's official. And we have until then to complete our work and then present it to the city council for their consideration and approval. So this slide shows our timeline, and now we're on to the outcome documents for this phase. These are the agreements that we're going to be working on as a full commission over the next month, as the work from our subcommittees comes forward to the commission. And then if we can go to the next slide. This is our current project plan for this structure and details phase. We are currently in the blue box with the red border, and we'll be updating this slide as needed, but this shows the public and also our newer members of the commission how we get from now through the end of this phase, and how we get to agreements and the documents that we just reviewed. So next slide, please. Following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the Police Accountability Commission. The next full commission meeting is on Thursday, April 13th, where we will have a briefing from City Commissioner Renee Gonzalez, the one city commissioner we have not yet heard from. And then also just want to flag for folks that we have a community engagement event on Saturday, April 8th at the East Portland Community Center. So I'll turn it over now to my co-chair Casey to talk about what we're doing today. But before I do that, I want to just extend a personal welcome to our new commissioners, some of whom are with us at a full commission meeting for the first time. I just want to say how happy I am that you've joined us, and excited to have you with us for the balance of our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And I will second that. It's fantastic to have new people joining in on the work that we're doing. I forgot to introduce myself before I did the land acknowledgement. I've just gotten so used to working with everybody here that I just kind of jumped into it, but I am Casey Lewis, and I use he, him pronouns, and I am one of the co-chairs for the current phase as well. So today we have a few tasks that we are looking at. One of the things that we are doing is looking at the draft areas of agreement on reporting and transparency. That subcommittee has been doing a whole bunch of work to be able to get these areas of agreement before the full commission. And so we are going to have an opportunity to review those, discuss, and decide on whether to approve the document or any changes that we might want to make to it. We are also going to, if we have time to get to it, be discussing some of the definitions that we are hoping to include in our agreements, including accountability and independent judgment. And we will also have an opportunity for public comment, as always, at the end of the session. And I believe in addition to all of those things, we are going to be having an equity training from our facilitators that will be originally was going to be at the beginning of the meeting, but at the request of the subcommittee on reporting and transparency, we're going to start with reviewing their document, and then we will have that training before we go into the public comment and our other wrap-up work.
Thank you, Co-Chair Casey. We're now going to start discussing the draft of the PAC areas of agreement on reporting and transparency, which the subcommittee referred to the commission on March 23rd. We ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please let me facilitate and be facilitated. And remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussions. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Will the co-chairs like to get the discussion started?
Yes, we would.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So good evening. My name is Connie Wan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the current co-chairs of the subcommittee of the agreements on reporting and transparency. We have been able to create a document that we're going to review this evening that kind of talks about it. We just scrolled through the table of contents, so you haven't missed anything, just letting you know that that was the beginning. The document begins with kind of a general statement about why transparency is important, because in this process is something that really comes up with almost all of our community members and such, as something that is the process up to date has lacked significantly. So I will read through certain sections and then we'll pause for comment and discussion. So transparency is about the public's right to know the public's business. The Police Accountability Commission understands and uplifts the importance of transparency. Transparency builds trust between the agencies and the community. Transparency allows for the community to be engaged and support the work and evolution of the agencies. Transparency ensures that the police, the state, and the governing bodies are held accountable and actionable to the community standards. Transparency invites all to participate and have access to the work and issues at hand. The Police Accountability Commission identified several barriers to police accountability in Portland in 2022, including that there is a current perception by both community members and law enforcement that the accountability system is opaque, unfair, and unjust. I guess I will pause at this moment because I can't see any further on the screen, but is there any comment so far? Okay, great. Do you mind scrolling up a little?
So I have a question. This is a Debbie, the other co-chair, Debbie Iona, she, her. We want to be agreeing to these. So should we be agreeing at each one of these segments, or how, Victoria, how do you want to handle that?
Yes, let me pass it to staff. Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Staff?
Sure.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. We'll be towards the end of this conversation, whether today or at a future meeting, there will be a request for consensus on the whole document. And so it's not technically necessary to do a consensus request on each section by section. However, just to ask the members of the commission if you're okay with moving on. So to sort of demonstrate on this section, Co-Chair Connie asked if there was any discussion. There wasn't any on this particular text, so we would just ask, can we move on? If on the other hand, there is something that is proposed to change, then we would do our normal 2 questions, which is there any strong opposition to the change? Is there general agreement to it? And there are a couple things which are known as going to need a decision of the commission in that way, which we'll flag when we get to that point. Does that answer the question, Co-Chair Debbie?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to make sure we didn't get through this whole thing and then go, oh, we should have agreed to each section. But yeah, I get, we'll ask questions as they come up. And then if we make a change, decide if we agree, and then really we'll just agree to the whole thing at the end or not. So, okay, thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, so for this portion, can we move on? And feel free to just show, yeah, great. And I'm asking the question because just to flag, there is one of those things that I mentioned that are flagged. The subcommittee referred the whole document on, recommending that the full commission approve it. There are 3 items in here that 2 or 3 actually that were not they were referred without recommendation as a potential thing to consider inclusion or not. And so one of them is this highlighted text here, which is a quote from the Barriers and Best Practices document that may make sense to include and repeat here, or may not contribute to the document or to this section, and that's up to the commission to decide. I'll pass it back over to Victoria. Thanks.
Thank you, staff. Then for that section that's highlighted, Commissioner Co-Chair Connie, would you like to read it and I can ask the questions? Thank you.
Sure. By design, the lack of transparency bleeds into the inability to monitor for effectiveness, improvement, or challenges. The data that are available are limited and do not summarize the impact made to accountability.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Yes, staff?
I just wanted to note that there is a 1 paragraph further, and that's where it ends. So I'm not sure if you want to read the whole thing for context or before we do that.
Let's read everything for context. Thank you, staff.
The PAC also considered the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement's observation that state laws already afford extraordinary protections to law enforcement officers and conceal extensive information regarding their work from the public. And NACOL's recommendation for oversight independence, including that oversight bodies should not keep secrets for law enforcement. The City Council mandated that the Police Accountability Commission define in its organizational details that transparency of the process. When will reports come back to council, how will they be made and what will they contain? Will reports be made public? When will meetings be open to the public? And what information about individual investigations will be made to the public?
I think the next section too, the
Well,
last.
okay. The commission's recommendations, if implemented, will improve upon the current system by ensuring transparency in meetings, public ability to give input before decisions are made, regular reporting, access for the public to information about policing and police accountability, including raw data, and confidentiality where necessary for safety.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any discussion about this section the Co-Chair Connie just read? Can we move? Oh, okay, Commissioner Dunn?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a member of the commission. I'm thinking that that highlighted paragraph that's in red, instead of the first words being by design, which I understand came from another document that we already approved, but I think you should say in the current system, the lack of transparency bleeds into blah, blah, blah. Because I don't think in our final document, we should be accusing people of designing it this, to be as bad as it has been. I think it'd be better for us to say in the current system. That way it's a little bit more neutral. That's my proposal.
Thank you. Then you're suggesting to add, to change and put in the current system.
Right. Instead of the words by design, say the words in the current system.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions about this section? Then let me ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was out to the proposed changes that Commissioner Dunn just did? Oh, Commissioner Sophia?
Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment. I'm sorry. My comment was I kind of disagree because it is by design. The system is the way it is. I just wanted to say that because it has been designed that way, but I'm okay with the current system as well. I just wanted to make my comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Sima? You're in mute.
Sorry about that. I thought I hit unmute. I actually see both. So I agree with Commissioner Glenn as well as Commissioner Handelman, whereas like in the current system by design, or in the current system is designed kind of lead into having both. Sorry, I'm not wording it well right now. But yeah, I kind of see both being important, but definitely I agree with Commissioner Glenn that it is very important to enunciate that this is by design. And then obviously gesturing towards it being part of the current system.
Okay. Then your suggestion is in the current system by design, the lack of transparency bleeds into inability to monitor. Thank you.
And that sounds like a horrible mouthful. So maybe that's just way too much wordsmithing. We have to pick and choose. But if I had to choose one, I would say by design.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Commissioner Jay?
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe for that paragraph, having like in the current system, lack of transparency, blah, 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 but maybe saying like moving the by design part, like to the data that are available are limited by design. Maybe that might be a spot to put it because that's sort of like the effect of the system, of the designed system.
Thank you. Then your suggestion will be in the current system, the lack of transparency bleeds into the inability to monitor for effectiveness, improvement, or challenge. The data by design that are available are limited. Okay, thank you. Staff?
Yeah, just a quick note that the second version down here, the quotation is because this is the text as it exactly reads in the document that was approved by the commission on September 15th, which is the areas of agreement on barriers to police accountability and best practices in Portland. So the quotation is in reference of that, and so it may be worth considering if adapting the quote might be a better thing to do in that document, as opposed to having two versions of it for later. But wanted to note that for the, and if this text were to remain in any way, we'd footnote to ensure that that was cited like we do for all the other documents. You can see up here, there's a footnote that's cited as well. Just wanted to flag that.
Thank you, staff. Is there any other conversation, questions about this? Okay, because we have two options, I will need to if we don't have consensus about one option, I will start with CMAP proportion, Commissioner CMAP. Please raise your hand if you are in favor of changing as it is to the proposed change to Commissioner CMAP. And I can say, I can ask, is there a strong opposition to changing from as it was to the proposed change by Commissioner CMAP? That's the green one. Is there a general agreement to changing from the proposed change and leave it as it is in the font color green? Okay, I only see 1, 2. Can you let me ask again, that way I can count. Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change that was proposed by Commissioner CMAP? Okay, there is a couple.
Can I vote for myself?
Yes. Then the majority of the commissioners, I don't know if I have consensus. Oh, there is sufficient because the majority approve it. Okay, we will leave it like Commissioner CMAP proposed. Thank you. Can we move on? Okay, we can move on. Co-Chair Connie.
Connie, would you like me to read for a while since we have more time than we anticipated? You may actually make it to the end.
Oh, sure.
Okay, all right, so we read that number 7, so I think we're at where it starts out, the commission's recommendations, if implemented, will improve upon the current system by,
Commissioner, I'm sorry, I make a mistake. I need to ask if there is anything on this section that was read by Commissioner Connie that needs to be reviewed, or if we can move on their question or any discussion on this part, not just the highlighted, but the whole other parts of what she read. Is there any discussion? No? Okay, can we move on? I see, okay, thank you. We can move on. And now, Commissioner Debbie, I'm sorry, you can continue.
oh, it's fine. Did we read that paragraph right before this A? And if we did, I'll just
Yes,
go.
we
We did, okay, good. All right, so A, transparency in meetings and hearings. All meetings of the Oversight Board shall be open to the public, except when otherwise required. Meetings and hearings of the Oversight Board shall be subject to the Oregon Public Meetings Law, ORS 192-610 through 192-710. Proper notice, agendas, meeting summaries, and meeting materials will be made available to the public in a timely way. A1, public participation in meetings. Meetings of the Oversight Board will be open to the public and offer time for public comment. Meetings and hearings will be held publicly and allow for community input. Public comment will be allowed at minimum before key decisions are made. Oversight board support for policing and accountability transparency. The oversight board will meet regularly with the staff director, including during public meetings. The oversight board will regularly host the chief of police, mayor, and other relevant officials at its public meetings. The agency director will provide written updates at each full oversight board meeting with information on the status of agency investigations and of those conducted by the police bureau, if any, and other relevant updates about the board and staff.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Is there any discussion? Questions? Can we move on? Okay, thank you. We can continue reading. Thank you.
Do you want to take this page, Commissioner Connie?
Sure. Reporting to the public and city council, regular reporting to city council. The oversight board and agency will publish a written annual report with executive summary by a consistent date each year. The report will be presented at a public oversight board meeting with public comment and questions encouraged. The annual reports will also be present at a public city council session with oral testimony accepted. The oversight board may also issue quarterly reports. The board shall hire a qualified staff member, a team, or independent experts to review closed investigations pertaining to officer-involved shootings, deaths in custody, and use of deadly force that do not result in death on an ongoing basis. The completed reviews shall be described in periodic reports available to the public and include case and investigative summaries, policy implications, recommendations for improvements in police and oversight board policies or practices. Do you want to scroll up or shall we pause here?
We can pause and ask if there are any questions or discussions or comments about what Co-Chair Connie just read. Yes, staff?
Yeah, I just wanted to flag, and maybe this is better fixed through something other than a typographical insertion of a comma, but in the paragraph, this last phrase of the third paragraph, the on an ongoing basis might need a comma before it to clarify that it's the review that's being done on an ongoing basis, as opposed to the uses of deadly force not resulting in death on an ongoing basis.
I agree.
So we could put a comma there, or possibly review on closed investigations on an ongoing basis pertaining, as you see fit, of course. I don't know if any commissioner would like to make any suggestion, or if it's okay to just add a comment.
Thank you, staff. And Co-Chair Debbie, would you like to make a suggestion?
I think it's fine just to leave it there and put a comma. I know that definitely hit me wrong when I heard it, so I'm glad you pointed that out.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Because it's just a comma, should I ask? Is there, okay, can we move on? I don't, oh yeah, Commissioner Dan.
Yeah, I liked the staff suggestion of moving it, because the way it is now, it technically says the board shall hire the person on an ongoing basis, but we mean that they're going to review the closed investigations on an ongoing basis. So I suggest to review closed investigations on an ongoing basis, or an investigation obtained. Well, yeah. Yes, I think that would be better.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Is there any additional suggestions or questions? Comments? Okay, let's ask, is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Can we move on? Thank you. Commissioners Debbie or Connie, you can continue reading.
I can continue to read.
Thank you.
These deadly force reports will be presented to the public and city council. Oral testimony will be accepted at city council sessions.
Can we move on?
Next would be annual report required contents.
Commissioner Faith, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I'm Faith Aiken. I use she, her pronouns. Welcome, new folks to the fun process of shared editing. Just a quick note of the removal of oral testimony to just testimony. Some people don't communicate orally. So the last sentence, these deadly force reports. So it could just be testimony will be accepted or public testimony. Contemporaneous love, Dan. Yeah, public testimony will be accepted at city council sessions would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith, and I will pass it to Co-Chair Debbie.
So Commissioner Faith, if you read that, does that tell you that if somebody did want to give oral testimony, it would be allowed? Because, you know, up until recently, Mayor Wheeler was not allowing oral testimony at city council sessions on reports.
It does for me, and yet I understand your point. I think that we could put parens and add oral. I just want to be, yeah. So contemporaneous public oral testimony.
Or how about after testimony, put comma, including oral, comma.
Great.
Would that work?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we kind of had to try hard to get him to change his mind, and I hate to lose that opportunity again.
That's fair.
Facilitator Victoria, I think you may be muted.
Oh, thank you. You're right. I'm sorry. Then thank you, Commissioner Faith and Co-Chair Debbie. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed changes? Thank you. Can we move on? Okay, thank you, Co-Chair Connie.
Okay. So annual report required contents, the overview. The overview of the accountability system, the vision, mission, and values, a message from the board leadership or officers, and a message from the executive director. Do we want to note the changes?
Staff? Yes, thank you, Commissioner Connie. Staff?
Yeah, so just a little context to this. This is a list that runs in several categories over about 2 pages of this document. So it may be helpful to kind of work through it. There is in some cities identified in the other jurisdictions document, there are lists of required contents in code. So this is effectively an area of agreement, if the commission were to agree to it, to put that this list of things is required to be in the annual report of the oversight board and staff. And that would likely be reflected in the code proposals. So just it may be helpful to kind of read the whole list and then work back through it, just because as you're reading overview, it may, well, what about this? And that might be in a later category. So just a suggestion there.
Thank you, staff. Co-Chair Debbie?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure it's clear that this list, all of these things were pulled out of either past IPR reports or other jurisdictions, the codes from other jurisdictions, or like the NACOL booklet on police accountability. So we, you know, found all these ideas from various places and then here categorized them and felt it was important to list them all so that we, assuming this list is acceptable or whatever adjustments we make, and then it gets included in the code, we'll know now what the, you know, what will be expected in the annual reports that our new oversight body will be producing. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Then let's read the whole list as a staff proposed, and then we can have a discussion or questions or comments if necessary. Thank you.
Okay. About the Oversight Board and Agency. Information and resources about Oversight Board duties, information and resources about Oversight Board, duties and powers of the Oversight Board, processes, procedures, and definitions relevant to the agency's work, such as how complaints are processed and adjudicated, stages of complaint handling, member biographies, agency staff, training and professional development, organizational structure, board activities, and the summary of committee work. Policy recommendations related to the policies and practices, collective bargaining agreements, city ordinances, and state law, the status and outcomes of any previous recommendations. For any recommendations that have not been implemented, the reasons, with an emphasis on persistent issues not yet addressed by PPB and the City Council, analysis of closed cases for policy implications, complaints of alleged officer misconduct, complaints by year, quarter, allegations by unit, type, employees named in complaints, to the extent allowed by law and policy, information regarding uniformed personnel who are the subjects of multiple complaints, complainants who filed multiple complaints, and issues that were raised by multiple complaints, to the extent allowed by law and policy. The number of named employees who have received 2 or more sustained complaints within 1 year, to the extent allowed by law and policy. Cases, allegations, officer and complainant demographics, disaggregated by geographic area, investigations, full, expedited, etc., findings, overturned findings, discipline imposed, the number of percentage of cases that were appealed or grieved, and the number of percentage of these cases in which findings and or discipline determinations were changed, and the nature of those changes. The number and percentage of all complaints handled directly by frontline supervisors, referred for supervisor action, management action, training, or alternative resolution. The number of times a bureau employee failed to comply with the agency's request for an interview or for the production of documents, and the number of times a bureau sworn employee failed to comply with a valid subpoena, and whether discipline was imposed for any such non-compliance. The number, nature, and settlement amount of civil suits against the PPB officers, regardless of whether the city is a defendant in the litigation. Timelines of complaint resolution, redacted case summaries, board actions by case number, date, and findings, trends related to member history and complaint type, as well as frequency, consistency, and adequacy of discipline imposed, overall patterns and trends, death cases, and mediations. Outreach and satisfaction, information on outreach efforts, including feedback received at the community events, engagement with the public, and with the police bureau. Complainant satisfaction survey results.
Thank you, Co-Chair Connie. Is there questions, comments? Yes, Commissioner Catherine?
When it talks about the complaints or the determinations that are appealed or grieved, I think that's yes, right there, the number and percentage of cases that were appealed or grieved. I don't sure what I understand what grieved means there.
So, believe me, I'm not an expert, but my understanding is if you're a member of the police association and you don't agree with the findings, you know, through your union, you can file a grievance, and then it goes through that process that's where they resolve these kinds of issues through arbitration. But maybe somebody else on the commission can give an accurate answer, just to be sure.
You're saying those are the cases that go to arbitration? Is that what you're?
I think so. You know, police officers can file grievances if they don't agree with, you know, the disciplinary process, the outcome. So, so that would be something that you want to keep track of. There were five officers filed grievances this year in their misconduct cases, the outcome of their misconduct cases. But again, perhaps there's somebody else in our group who would, or if anybody's noticing that I'm giving the wrong answer, please say so.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner. Do you have a suggestion, Commissioner?
So I would I'm trying to sync it with what we proposed in the officer accountability process, which I think did acknowledge an arbitration track, but I'm not sure. I wonder if it would be better to say something that were appealed or otherwise challenged to then encompass the, you know, however that sort of the process under which the collective bargaining agreement allows a challenge. That may be, using that more general term, may help this document sync up with the officer accountability document.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. And before I pass it to Commissioner Fay and Commissioner Sophia and Commissioner Cherry and Commissioner Dan, is from any of you have a suggestions for this particular point? No? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Sophia? Yes, please.
Yes, I think part of the confusion I had too is, so we are counting the number of percentage of the cases where a grievance was filed or an appeal or a grievance was appealed. So is that what we're trying to say? Because I think that changes things if you're trying to capture both the grievances and the grievances that were appealed.
And Commissioner David, are you gonna answer Commissioner Sophia?
I'm going to try. So it seems to me that if you're a community member, well, police officers can also appeal cases. I'm pretty sure under the accountability, you know, thing that we agreed to, but so can community members. But I actually like Commissioner Co-Chair Catherine's suggestion about putting something more generic, because otherwise challenge then would just cover it all. And so if you said appeal or otherwise challenge, then you know, that could include a grievance through the, you know, through the union, or anything else that maybe is out there that we're not sure about. So I think that's kind of a good suggestion, and we could just get rid of the grievance term.
Thank you. And Commissioner Sophia, are you okay with that suggestion?
It's not the suggestion. I just want to be clear what we're trying to say. That's kind of where my question came from. Are we trying to count only appeals or are we counting appeals and complaints? Both. That's my question, because like I said, it changes things depending on what we're talking about. It's not that I disagree with Commissioner Catherine, it's just, I'm not sure what we're talking about. That's all.
And Commissioner Catherine or Commissioner Debbie, can you answer that question? Commissioner Debbie?
Well, I think that this particular one, because there are other ones where they're going to keep track of all the cases that came in and all of that kind of stuff. This particular point just covers, so some cases are going to go through from start to finish and everybody's just going to live with whatever the outcome is. Then there are going to be some cases where people go, nope, I don't agree with that. And then you will have the opportunity to appeal, or if you're a union member, you can file a grievance. And so then this particular point then to me captures those things. The ones where everybody didn't just accept the outcome. Somebody said, no, I don't like that. I want to take the next steps. And then sometimes what's going to happen in those cases is everything's going to stay the same. Even though you challenged it, you're going to not win. And so, but then some of them, there will be changes. The findings will be either changed or eliminated. And so that way you can capture all of that in your annual report of how many cases fall into that category. So I hope that sort of makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Debbie and Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Fate?
Thanks. Yeah, I have maybe an overarching question and then a couple of more granular ones. I don't know if this gets into some of the work of my colleagues in the staff structure and details subcommittee. But I am an analyst during the day, and in my day job, if someone handed me this list, what comes up to me is, as an analyst, I may not have all of these data available to me, or I may have a lot of barriers to getting these data. So what is sort of the accountability arm or mechanism for the staff who writes this report? I think that's sort of my overarching question is 7006 is what CMOB wrote. I thought that was an answer, and I was like, I don't even conceptually understand that answer. So that's what comes up for me is, as an analyst, this would be a really hard list to produce annually. The second component of that is more nuanced around the civil report on civil litigation. Can we get that? Question mark. Okay, Dan, I see your head is nodding.
That's required. It's required right now by the settlement agreement.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so they already have to do that.
Thank you. And then this one was so minor, actually, staff, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down. Yeah, so on the point trends related to member history and complaint type. Trends related to member history and complaint type. Like members of the board. So trends related. Okay, thank you.
Please. Yeah, good.
Oh,
thanks.
okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
A lot of this stuff just got copied out of other
Mhm.
people's codes. Yeah. So some of the terminology, I mean, Samir changed a lot of it, but yeah, there were some words in there that obviously aren't the ones that we use in Portland. So
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fate. Commissioner Dan?
Hi, yeah, so I just for clarification on the point around the one that Commissioner McDowell was raising, I put into the chat the 4 ways that officers are allowed to appeal, and the way the flow chart was written in officer accountability. They can appeal to the board, they can file a grievance, and I think when there's some discussion here about us being not 100% clear, I think we wrote it that the grievance automatically leads to arbitration, but that's not true, because sometimes the grievances can be resolved just through discussion between the city and the officer or the PPA. the Civil Service Board and the Loudermilk due process hearing that we've been talking about since we started this process. So there are 4 possible ways, and I support Commissioner McDowell's amendment because I think that covers it. And in case that changes and some of those things go away from the contract or from the Supreme Court ruling that put them in place, then the city code will still be accurate. I also just want to put a pin in something for our next phase, note to ourselves for the future, that I think the first several years of these reports should include data from this current system, even if the data don't completely line up because we don't have the same kind of information. But I think it'd be important to have that to compare and contrast. So I just want to flag that for our transition phase, if that's okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Cherry? Would you like to participate?
I'm here.
Thank you.
My hand was up, but I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, that's completely okay. Thank you very much. Okay, then I need to ask the question. Is there anything else? I need to ask the question in 2 parts. I will ask separate questions. For the one that's highlighted right now, is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to what is proposed? Then is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to what is proposed? Thank you very much. We can go, can we move on to the next one? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to what is proposed now? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to what is proposed now? Thank you. Can we move on? Okay. Now, is there any other changes? No, is there any other discussion for any other of the parts? No, can we move on? Okay. Let's continue. Thank you.
So, Connie, I'm okay with reading now for a while if you'd like.
Okay, Commissioner Catherine just raised her hand.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm sorry if I was slow there, but I just wondered, did we address Faith's question about what happens if this information is not available? And are there, sort of that, I think that was, to me, it was a good question because this is a lot. So I guess I just wonder if we need to have discussion on that or at least make sure we have some time to discuss that at a future time.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine, and I will pass it to staff.
Yeah, so thank you. This might be a question that we ask for some legal insight into as well from possibly City Attorney's Office about the sort of general parameters around accountability for city staff in the question of, if they're violating or not complying with city code in a general sense. And then also if the reason for that is inability to gain the data, which is the other part of Commissioner Faith's question. So just flagging that if I know the City Attorney's Office is here, but I'm not sure if they'd have an answer immediately. So maybe that's something to ask at some point. And that's not the sum total of the response to that question. I'm sure there's more to discuss, but I just wanted to ensure that that was a part of the conversation too.
Thank you, staff. Then Commissioner Dan?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of things that are in city code right now that aren't happening, and I don't think anybody gets held accountable for it. And I don't think it's going to, cause the staff to get disciplined or fired. I think unfortunately, but this is something all of us need to keep in mind as commissioners and the folks in the audience, that the way to hold the board accountable to making sure those data get put in there is to keep bugging them about it and make sure that they do what they're asked to do. And if they can't do it, then they can put something in the report that says these data were not available, right? But I think that I can point to specific examples if you're interested. But and one specific one is that the Independent Police Review and Citizen Review Committee are supposed to be taking the recommendations that come in from those reviews of deaths in custody deadly force cases that we have inserted into this new code as well. And they're supposed to be following up on them and make sure they get done. But that hasn't happened for over 10 years. Everything that we're doing is very optimistic that this system will do what we're writing down. But it's going to take all of us following up on it to make sure that it happens the way that we envision it. So that's my experience with it. I'm not sure if that's a legal answer, but I think that's a practical answer for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Staff?
Yeah, just to clarify, in no way disagreeing with that premise. I think that the answer may be there isn't much from a legal perspective as well. But there is one additional note that is unique to this structure, though, which is that ostensibly the people who are putting together the report are staff of the oversight board who ultimately report to the director. And there is a unique accountability metric for the director, which is that they report to the oversight board. So if the members of the oversight board do not feel that the director is sufficiently ensuring that the reporting that's coming out is in compliance with city code, they have the ability to include that in the performance evaluation of the director and indirectly of that person as a manager of their staff that's actually developing the report. And I'm sure that the ability or inability to gain that data is likely to be a part of that conversation too. That might be a helpful piece of information to include in your considerations.
Thank you, staff. Commissioner Monica.
This also may be an opportunity to request for a good data analyst that knows how to gather this data best and create the system that would work so that it is not so overwhelming, right? So just a thought.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica. Okay, then can we move on? Okay. And now, Co-Chair Debbie, you can continue reading. Thank you.
Okay, raw data. Raw data shall be available for download, inspection, and analyses by members of the public. Publishing raw data on a regular basis promotes transparency and public confidence in both the law enforcement and civilian oversight agency.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was pausing for the clock.
Yeah.
So raw data shall include complaints, intake decisions, closure reasons, findings, discipline, complainant demographics, and complaint geographies. Data sharing shall adhere to standards that prioritize the protection of personal identifiable information of the complainant and applicable community members. Raw data available for download shall include an appendix describing data sources, data definitions, and other pertinent contextual information. The board will publicly report its findings, conclusions, and recommendations coming out of misconduct case hearings.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Is there any discussion, questions? Co-Chair Jay?
Yeah, I was wondering, it said applicable community members and yeah, that made me concerned about like privacy issues and what kind of community information would be shared. I was wondering, yeah, does anyone have more information about that?
So I think I'm going to turn that over to Commissioner Faith. She did the research on this section.
Thank you. Commissioner Faith?
Yeah, so I think this sentence was written specifically around wanting to understand how do we prioritize transparency, but also protect complainants. And along with protecting complainants would be like a community member who witnessed police misconduct or was a witness to support the complainant. And so when this sentence is stating that any personal identifiable information will be withheld in the raw data. So like the shorthand for PII is, name, address, phone number, even like, well, zip code you can use, but any way that someone would be able to know who that person was, that would be a community member that was working in conjunction with the complainant. I hope that answers.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Coach. Thank you. Is there?
Thank you, Faith.
Thank you. Can we move on? Thank you.
Okay, dashboards. Interactive dashboards shall be developed around the oversight data so that it can be visualized in different ways. Dashboards may display case statistics, open, closed statuses, sustained allegations, findings, and discipline. Dashboards shall provide filters to disaggregate data by race, ethnicity, geography, and other important categories to offer a nuanced look at the data. Communication through data dashboards shall prioritize accessibility and usability. When applicable, the board and/or staff shall provide technical assistance, trainings, or webinars to help understand the data. The board may also display policy recommendations in a dashboard.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Is there questions or comments about this two sentence? Okay, can we move on? Okay, thank you.
Accessibility. Any communication offered by the oversight board shall be written accessibly. Communication shall prioritize sharing with the public in language that is as clear and simple as possible. While language will be clear and concise, it will not come at the expense of omitting essential details. When appropriate, communication shall follow best practice in inclusive writing, which can be referenced in the Office of Equity and Human Rights Writing Guide. Populations most at risk of harm at the hands of police shall be prioritized in communication that is culturally specific, relevant, and easily digestible. These priority populations include, but are not limited to, people experiencing mental illness, people with disabilities, Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Commissioner Ajay.
In regards to accessibility, I think a lot about like our current website and how inaccessible it is for. I have like a master's degree, not that that makes me special or anything, but like, and I grew up in a house with a computer, and I find it virtually impossible to find anything I need on our current website. So could we also write something about prioritizing storing it on an accessible website or some sort of accessible data management? Because if it's stored anyway like it is right now, it'll be completely impossible for even a genius to be able to find, much less, read.
Thank you. And do you have a suggestion how to write that or add that, Commissioner Ajay?
I don't know. I mean, my first thought was any communication offered by the oversight board shall be written and stored accessibly, but I don't know if that's specific enough. Maybe something around data management will also prioritize accessibility or something like that. I don't know. Maybe someone else has a better idea. I see some nods. Someone come up with something.
Thank you. Is there any additional? Yes, Commissioner Sophia.
Yes, you bringing that up, accessibility, when I saw written, I'm thinking of people who have literacy issues, maybe, is that included in with our disabilities? And accessibility? I'm just asking that question. So I just thought about that just as we were discussing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Anyone would like to answer? Commissioner Sophia, would you like to continue, or you have additional questions or comments?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll put my hand down.
It's okay. Thank you. Commissioner Dan?
Oh, so this is actually responding to Commissioner Amechi, because I think what we could put in is language that could say, if necessary, this will be stored on a website separate from the cities. So that that way it'll cover not having to have those bad interfaces.
Thank you. Is there any additional information or comments?
Look at Commissioner Faith's comment in the chat.
Okay.
That seems like a, a clear explanation that we're talking about having something that's easy for people to find.
Yes.
Well organized, all of that. So I like the way it's written. Oh, archiving.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith and Co-Chair Debbie. Okay, then let's review this, and because there is a couple of changes, I will ask, can I ask? Oh, I will ask, I think I need to have 3 questions, right? Okay, let's start. For the first part, is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Oh, Commissioner Debbie, do you have anything to say?
Oh, I was just gonna also suggest, Commissioner Dan thought that maybe in that very last line, it should be archiving. Is that, Commissioner Faith, does that seem right to you, or because archival of information doesn't seem quite right?
Thank you for catching up.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to catch that before we went on. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Faye. And Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to, I don't know if I got an answer to my question about the literacy. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Faith?
Not that I'm any authority, but in my mind, that really lands with people with disabilities, like learning disabilities. If it is helpful to be more explicit of like learning, intellectual, developmental disabilities, we can explain or extrapolate. And then also in the OEHR Office of Equity and Human Rights Writing Guide, they are really explicit around how to use clear language for folks who cannot comfortably navigate reading. So, Sophia, does that address that? Or would you like it called out more explicitly?
Yeah, my thought that came from just having, is it the oversight board shall be written? I mean, I'm sorry, it's just this oversight board shall be written and stored, accessibility. Maybe we could just say accessible for all disabilities, because you said you consider that a disability? All formats. That's my concern. It's like, if they can't read, will it be, accessible recording or something like that? That's all. And I'm sure it has. If there's someone blind, they probably would need that as well, right? Or in Braille or something. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Okay. And Commissioner Cherry, you have a question. It's in the chat. Would you like to ask that question or you want me to read it? I can read it for you.
I'll go ahead and read it. I was just making a suggestion, kind of using what Dan said, but also, and it's just a suggestion. It doesn't have to be changed. I was just saying, any communications by the Oversight Board shall be written and archived with attention to disabilities and organization. Maybe trying to kill two birds with one stone in the sense that it would have to be organized so that someone like Faith could find things in there, but also, you know, maybe it's available in Braille, maybe it's available in Spanish also. And maybe that comes under attention to disabilities, just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, is there any additional comments in the first part? Yes, Commissioner Aje?
Yeah, I love that change. I was just wondering if instead of archived with attention to disabilities, changing that to accessibility in organization. Just because the accessibility should be referring to disabilities, but also to the fact that, the accessibility measures are useful for everyone. So
thank you. And I know Attorney Sarah Ames is here. I will pass it to you, but before I pass it to you, I just gonna, unless you wanna comment on the first part as well. Do you wanna, I can ask the question for the first part. But if you wanna comment, go ahead before I ask the question.
Oh, I just wanted to say I appreciate that your goals for accessibility and all those. I would like to say that the city has a kind of overarching code that applies to this and is also subject to the Americans with Disabilities Act and some of the other elements. So there are provisions that ensure accessibility and accommodation in communications that apply to all city agencies. And of course, the Oversight Board will be one. I would also say that the city tech services, all city agencies use kind of the same web platform and some use it better than others. So I think your aspirations are good to give staff some guidance, but I don't believe that you will be exempt from using the city's website, for example. So that would be one thing that I just don't think is going to be possible. And so some of this is already, I believe, covered for all city agencies under city code, but I think it's not wrong for you to re-emphasize it for the future staff at this board.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your information. Okay. We're gonna go first review and accept B5, and then we're gonna go to break. But I'm gonna ask separate questions for every part of B5. My first question is on the part that's highlighted right now. Is there a strong opposition to changing from as it is to the proposed change? Okay, is there general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Let's go to the second part, this highlight. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was, to adding this part to this paragraph? Is there a general agreement to adding this part to the paragraph? Thank you. let's go to the last part. And is there a strong opposition to adding this sentence to B5? Is there a general agreement to adding this sentence to B5? Okay. Thank you very much. It's 7:57. We will take a 5 minutes break and come back at 8:02. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Let's continue with the discussion on the document. And we know co-chair Connie has to step out, but we have co-chair Debbie and staff.
Actually, we're moving on to the next item on the agenda,
Okay.
as planned before. Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the next item on the agenda. That it is the equity training, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. I will pass it to Dr. Moses for the equity training, and then we will resume our reviewing the document. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful that we're afforded this opportunity to be able to do this equity training while we're doing this really, really important work. And so I'm going to invite us to center ourselves. So I'm going to invite you to sit comfortably and to feel yourself gently come into your seated position and feel the support of the chair. Also, I invite you to close your eyes or to gaze softly down. I invite you to place your hands comfortably in your lap. And just listen to your breath. Your breath is your center. Coming back to your breath allows you to take in difficult information. It allows you to give and receive feedback. Your breath allows you to stay present in your body and not go into fight or flight. I invite you to take 3 breaths. On four counts in, 8 counts out. So breathing in for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, and out for 8. I invite you to do that 2 more times by yourself. Gently open your eyes. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Do a big stretch up. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much. Why is this a great practice when we're having these conversations? Anyone can jump in.
I think it's a great conversation starter, or it's a great thing to do before conversation because I'm more grounded and centered, and I'm more connected.
Thank you so much for that, Cherie. Yeah, we want to stay connected so we can stay at the table, so we can have the hard conversations that we have to have. These are skills that aren't always taught. And I have found in my yoga training and mindfulness training and this training and that training, that coming back to my breath has allowed me to stay at the table a longer time. Not have the amygdala hijack, but I can stay in my prefrontal cortex. I can stay here and think, and then even access my heart center, my compassion, my love, my space of my heart. Cherie?
Imagine if every time there should be de-escalation in a situation where the police need to be held accountable and this type of thing. Imagine if everybody stepped back and even took one breath before talking or acting. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't need things like a Portland Police Accountability Commission. Powerful. It's powerful.
And I want you to understand that that's how powerful this work is that you're doing. Like, there is hope. You are doing the hard work. On page 194, in chapter 10 of the Racial Healing Handbook, I really love how she has laid out in-person options and online options on how I personally can engage around each of these different chapters. And what you're doing here as a commission is way up there, right? You're coming in, you're stepping in as individuals, bringing your lived experience into the room, being vulnerable, working together with each other, having a great process for building consensus, or if not, then we have to take a vote and we can move on. This is what I'm saying is that this is a healthy organization. And these are healthy ways of being that you have brought into existence on this commission. Yay. How has, because we're getting really close, we have a conclusion, which is like looking to the future, and you do not have to be vulnerable right now. Whatever you want to share, I invite you to share on what you have learned going through this racial healing handbook to this point. Or you can say how you're applying it to the work that you're doing. Yes, Tirsa.
It's been a while since we last discussed these chapters. But the chapter that discussed about just being conscious and that being anti-racist is an ongoing, it's an ongoing field that requires to be constantly conscious. So that's something that I try to practice in my day-to-day, not just like being in the commission, but in my personal life as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, being anti-racist requires other people to help you be able to see what you're missing. I do not know that you can decolonize your thinking by yourself. And so I have seen in this commission over the last year how you have helped each other become more aware. So thank you for that, Tirsa. And it is, you're right, it is a lifelong journey of really paying attention. Ajay.
Hey, thanks for this. And you know, I'm really into somatics and I love doing breath work. I'm really into Qigong and all sorts of mindfulness practices. But at the same time, I'm worried about this trend in, you know, racial justice, you know, DEI work that's focused on our bodies and, you know, the reactions to oppression, because I think to some extent it obfuscates, you know, the systemic things that bear down on people, you know, like I think about even the example of police, right? Like if police stop and took a breath, and there are plenty of police that do stop and take a breath and still will, you know, because like the way that the system is set up is such that you know, like the wheels are kind of in motion to a certain extent, to where sure, even if you stop and take a breath, there's still an expectation in your workplace culture that you're supposed to act in certain ways and be certain ways. And taking a breath is not necessarily going to change that, you know. And that's not to say that we shouldn't talk about this stuff, because like I said, like I practice mindfulness and I think it's a really powerful tool for social change, but only if we're really making those connections to the systemic and using mindfulness to allow us to see the agreements that we didn't even realize that we made, the contracts that we've signed away in terms of our rights, and the things that the concepts and the rigid ways of thinking and being that are imposed on us. I think that mindfulness can really be powerful for that, but like it's not enough by itself. Like it has to come in conjunction with a really good analysis of the system and our current material conditions and how they affect people. I think once we start getting too into the idealism realm, you know, with the it just, yeah, I think that we lose track of things and things can get off course. But I do love, you know, mindfulness, and I think it's powerful. But, you know, we have to remember for the for what is it for? By itself, it's not enough. But thanks.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I have learned from many different practitioners, some of them, you know, that are Buddhists, and some of them, you know, that command equity from a lot of different perspectives. My flavor is love and compassion, right? That's my foundational perspective around doing equity work and systemic change. And then addressing the defendedness that happens when people are challenged And it gets really hard. And so I'm trying to give us tools to be able to stay at the table longer. So yes, and absolutely, if I stayed in this realm of, you know, warm and fuzzy stuff, we would not be able to address the systemic racism. We would not be able to be chipping away at this and holding people accountable and being able to name, like, just being able to know what systemic racism is, that it's different than the individual, that we have an institution and a system and a culture. Like, these are, then we're really addressing the real thing that you want us to talk about. So, yay. Thank you for that. Sophia.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking about what you said and the other Sherry and Ajay, and I was thinking this equity training, I'm trying to wrap it up and saying it allows us to, and you were saying the tools, but to question the status quo. I mean, that's really what we're doing. We're questioning, why are things the way they are? How did they get there? And what do we need? What tools, as you said, do we need to be able to, I want to call it, breach that, right? How do we correct that? How do we find a way to make it better? And how do we have those conversations? Understanding where some people may come from, their ideas are learned, and it's their experiences that put them in those mindsets, and being able to understand that everybody comes from a different background, a different mindset, but there is an issue, a problem with the status quo, and if we don't question it, it's not going to change if we don't do something about it. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Monica.
The thing that I've been struggling with, one of the things that I've been struggling with the most since we all started this work is trying to fix a system that is working so well for those original purposes that they were made for, within the system, within the constraints of a system that we're in, having to follow the rules of engagement from cities, having to follow the rules of what document, what this, who told me what to do. It's kind of, it's so frustrating to have to, a system that I almost feel like just should be just completely demolished and restart all over again, to have to be limited by the process is where I need to take deep breaths so that I can keep doing it, because it can be so frustrating sometimes.
Thank you for speaking that truth, Monica. I can feel it when we're out and when we're doing the community engagement work, how hard it is. I can feel that on your behalf, because I know you all are warriors. You're here for a reason. You're here to change a patriarchal, misogynistic system that is extractive. And we're working within the system to change the system. And so my hope is that I'm giving you skills to stay at that table and to keep breathing. And don't give up. Yes, Cherie.
Morgan Freeman said something in an interview one time that really touched my heart. And if I can, I'd like to read it really fast. I pulled it up on my phone. So he was speaking with Mike Wallace, and they were talking about Black History Month. And here was his opinion. He said on Black History Month, for the show 60 Minutes, Freeman elaborated, Black History Month is American history, and so shouldn't be delegated to a single month where we pay attention to it. Wallace pushed back, how are we supposed to end racism without it? Freeman responds, stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man, and I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a Black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman. You're not going to say, I know this white guy named Mike Wallace. You hear what I'm saying? Do you understand? And I thought about that, and I thought, you know, it is a form of division. If you speak and live from the premise that we are one race, the human race, one family, the human family, then he's got a really strong point there. I'm gonna stop calling you that white guy, and I don't want to be referred to as that Black guy. Just your name is Mike Wallace and my name is Morgan Freeman. I love that.
Thank you. And I am going to say that we have a lot of steps between here and there, because that, to me, I'm going to give you some feedback. May I give you some feedback, Cherie? Is a very colorblind perspective and disregards who I am and disregards who our culture says I am. I know who I am, but my culture tells me I am somebody different. I have deficits. I am not enough. And so, yes, I want to get there, but I think naming where we are and what we've experienced, and you can see we're in the middle of lots of culture wars all over the country right now because we're naming. We are just actually naming what the history has been. So, yes, and. And my goal is to get there one day. Yes, Shri.
The one thing that, so I love the fact that, you know, we're one race, the human race, but also I don't want to see, I don't like the sense of, well, now we don't honor traditions, we don't honor history, like everybody's just gray now. Like that wouldn't be acceptable. So I feel like in his statement, it could be confused that, okay, everybody is not beautiful anymore. Like these, you know, just to pull a name out, they had these Asian traditions, these, you know, centuries long things that we do to celebrate us, or, you know, that's not the point of it. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Yes, Ajay, and then Lavisa.
Yeah, there's a lot I could say about the whole color blindness thing. I think you sort of encaptured a lot of it, Dr. Moses. But I just wanted to also read something really quick from this Atlantic article. It's called Color Blindness is Counterproductive. And so one thing it says is, currently it is no longer socially acceptable in many places to identify oneself as racist. Instead, many Americans purport not to see color. However, their color blindness comes at a cost. By claiming that they do not see, they can also avert their eyes from the ways in which well-meaning people engage in practices that reproduce neighborhood and school segregation, relying on soft skills in ways that disadvantage racial minorities in the job market and hoard opportunities in ways that reserve access to better jobs for white peers. And the only reason why I wanted to bring that up is because I think that, you know, we're kind of raised in the US society to see us as having a color, not a colorblind, but like a melting pot society. But think about like a melting pot, right? All of the different metals get turned into one thing, basically. And that's assimilation, and that's colonization, and that is extremely damaging for people of color. And you know, I think of instead I've heard somebody talk about the salad bowl metaphor, where we each, and this is kind of a metaphor for a pluralistic society as opposed to the, you know, multicultural, you know, and we're each ourselves, and we each have our flavor, and we each have our label, and we're comfortable with that, and no one else can tell us otherwise. And that is respected. I don't need to get rid of my labels or my identities in order to be respected. I should be able to keep them and also feel valued and respected in our society. So I just wanted to say that.
I had a visceral reaction when I was like 6 or 7 about being in a melting pot. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to exist anymore. And really, when I was a little kid, it was like, oh no, I'm not going there. I don't want that. I'm thinking a salad bowl being tossed around is way better. So I'm all about the salad now. I'm like, I can do salad. This is exciting. Lavisa, I think your hand was up at one point.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. Lavisa Lloyd, PAC member. Yeah, there's a lot to say or a lot to unpack about the Morgan Freeman quote. And Sherry, I love your enthusiasm. And I love that you're, you know, thinking about these things and interrogating these things. But I would have some caution around that quote, because a lot of people of color and a lot of Black people do not agree with that idea or with that quote. And, you know, we're not a monolith. Black people are not a monolith. Something I wanted to talk about in terms of like the workbook is there's something that I had underlined was like distinguish between your commitment to being an anti-racist and the part of you that wants to be a perfect anti-racist. Socialization is real and racism is real, and you won't always be perfectly anti-racist. And that's, I think, really critical. And I think something else I wanted to bring up was just thinking about like what's useful, right? In terms of thinking about like privilege and, you know, if we're talking about race, right, we're talking about power, essentially. And something that I feel like doing this work of like the workbook has made me think a lot about is like, okay, what are the places where I have power, and what are the places where I have privilege, right? And there's a book that I just finished, which I would definitely recommend to everyone. The Future is Disabled by Leah Lakshmi, who identifies as a BIPOC disabled queer person, and which is just an amazing, amazing book. You can get it read by the author, which is awesome. And it made me think a lot about ability stuff and accommodations, and, you know, just how often have any of us been shamed for like asking for accommodations or trying to make something more accessible for ourselves or for others. And yeah, made me think about ways in which like I'm either within like the normative box or ways that I'm outside of the normative box. And it was just a really helpful kind of meditation. And it sort of goes back to our conversation about like the importance of like reading and like listening to the voices of like many, many, many people who have different experiences than we do, just so we can get those perspectives. And it also helps the people around us not have to like go back to the drawing board with us, right, all over and over again as we're having these conversations. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there and just say I really appreciated that. And I also really appreciated towards the end of the workbook, it asked like what are nearby like organizations and actions that you can take to like actively be more anti-racist, right? Because like at the end of the day, it's about like actions and like what are we doing and what are we enforcing, and where can we disrupt or dismantle in some way. And of course, like some of that work is here in these meetings, and then some of it is a lot of it is in our like our work lives and our personal lives. And something I had started to think about is like, oh, like, do I, how often do I intentionally shop at BIPOC owned businesses? Like I think I can do that more often and like, direct my dollars that way. And how much do I know about like the Asian immigrant experience in Oregon and on the West Coast, which is such a massive part of the history here, but which I feel like is really severely, sort of undertaught and like not focused on, not recognized as much as it should be. So it's something I'm like working on visiting and learning more about. So yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciated the book in terms of just like it I feel like kind of turned me on to how many resources there are out there to access, and not just thinking of all these things in like this linear fashion of like good, bad, black, white, racist, anti-racist, right? Like it's not about these binaries. It's about like the nuances, and it's about intersections between our different identities. Okay, and that's it. I could talk about intersectionality all day. It all comes back to intersectionality, but that's it. I'll end on that. Thanks.
I'm going to riff on a couple, and then I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Victoria. I'm going to say, having had my knees replaced in December, I'm walking around with a cane, and oh my gosh, the world looks at me very differently. Did not know that. I now know that. And I just have such a deeper understanding of how hard the world is to move around in when it's not made for you. So deep learning on that part, so many resources in Portland. The Muslim Educational Trust is in Tigard. It's right down the road. There's so many great programs, so many awesome resources. And I would ask you to sit with your trusted 10, to make that list of your trusted 10. And if they have the similar education, if they're similar race, if they're similar background to you, then I would challenge you to expand your trusted 10 and see who's missing from that list, whether it's gender, education, socioeconomic status, ability. Expand your list, expand the people that you get to know and that you commune with, that you break bread with. Sophia?
Yes, I just want to make a little general comment. So the picture behind me of our humpback whales, and if some of you know, I'm a scuba diver, and I'm just going to tell you, since I started that about, 10 years or so ago, that breathing is so important to scuba diving. Saving your air is saving your life, right? The less air you consume, the more relaxed you are, the less air you need. And I'm going to tell you, the most relaxing times of my life is underwater, and that breathing pattern, where, I'm coming back up with, after 1 hour, still with a half a tank of air. And some people can't even stay down, 15 or 20 minutes. It's a testament on control, how much your breathing control can do for you. So the breathing exercises you were talking about, I didn't really get it until I started scuba diving, and it's the most serene time of my life is underwater breathing. So also scuba diving, I scuba dive all over the world, and which has been another great thing for me, all the different cultures, watching travelers, American travelers in particular, go to these other countries and how uncomfortable they are, especially in the minority countries. I don't do Europe very much. I do everywhere else. And you know, it's taught me a lot about how different people are and how good people can be when they don't even know you. And how American culture can be so abrasive
Yeah.
to everyone around the world.
Extractive and fast and, you know,
Yeah.
all the things.
And the responses that they get, some of the American culture that they don't understand. People in general just want to be respected, and they will do anything for you if you respect them and be kind, and understand that not everyone's going to speak your language and the food is not going to be all American food. But I'm just saying that culturally, the scuba diving for me has been so immense in keeping me centered about myself, controlling my emotions, seeing the differences amongst people, and seeing how kind people can be when you are vulnerable, right? The most vulnerable times of my life is when I'm traveling out of the country. I don't speak the language and I don't know where I'm going. And you can get someone off the street to say, can you help me, or can they help you? And you can gesture, not even ever speak a word, and be invited to their home for dinner, right? So anyway,
Sounds amazing. I'll travel with you next time.
I'm just saying that all these things, whatever opportunities you get, just know that that breathing technique really, if you take it seriously, it will change you. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Really, thank you for everyone for participating. Thank you, Dr. Moses, for this fantastic experience. We really appreciate it. And we need to move on to the next item in the agenda, because we have to take now open public comment on the issues of the PAC as discussing, or community members can also tell their story about policing and police accountability. We ask members of the public to keep their comments or questions to 2 minutes in length and raise their hand in Zoom if you like to speak. And okay. I don't see.
I don't see anyone.
No. Okay. I don't see anyone. Then.
Not see any hands up.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. Okay, then we can go to next steps. That's the next item on the agenda. And I will pass it to member curiosities and I will pass it to the co-chairs.
Sorry, so this is the time we have on our agenda where it's really just kind of an open mic, questions from folks about where we're at, where we're going, suggestions, etc. So I'm not quite sure how much time we have in the agenda for it, but the facilitators will guide us on that. But this is the moment. 5 minutes, I hear. So this is the moment. If you got a question or you have a comment, just throw it in. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Catherine. Co-Chair Debbie?
So I just want to start off by thanking Samir, Dr. Moses, co-chairs for shifting the agenda so that our subcommittee on reporting and transparency could go before the equity training so that Connie, co-chair Connie, could participate as much as she was able to. So she had a work thing she had to go to. And then the second thing I wanted to bring up is, I wonder if it would be possible on the areas of agreement on the documents we've already completed, like officer accountability and structural oversight, if those could be put in the document section of the city website, because I think it'd be helpful to us to be able to access the whatever the most recent final version is of those if we need to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie, and thank you for all the work you have done. Thank you. Is there anything else that any of the members want to bring items to discuss or questions or follow-ups? This is your time. Okay, any questions? Yeah, Commissioner Dan?
Well, I don't know how popular this idea is, but I noticed there's only 3 paragraphs left in the document we started going through tonight, and I don't know if we can finish that before we have to wrap up at 9. So I don't know how the co-chairs and Commissioner Iona, co-chair Iona feel about that, or the other members of the commission, but I just wonder if we could just maybe get this done today. I don't know, just a thought.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. And I will pass it to staff for that. Thank you.
Nothing on this. I just have the next item. So yeah, happy to do that. We do have the agenda and scope document up, which I know is another item of interest to, in particular, the oversight staff subcommittee to get done today. So Victoria, if I'm able to move to that.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. So we've got, and there's a slide. Sorry, I'm looking around here, have some issues with internet right now. But there is a slide for this, but it just says that there's a proposed update to the agenda and scope. So going to screen share that very quickly here. By way of context, the agenda and scope is the document that takes all of the things that the commission is tasked with doing from the city council, as well as other items that the commission wanted to put in an order and puts it in an order. It's the foundation of the phases of work document, or phases of work structure, sorry. So with all of the work that the commission has been doing during this 2.5-month period, the reason for that is that it's defined that way in phase 4. Commission has completed the first 3 phases and are in the 4th. The proposed change, there's 3 parts to it from co-chairs, and this originated with identifying that in the current phase, which is structure and details, there is a question: will existing staff of IPR or internal affairs or anything else get preference to apply for staff positions at the new oversight board staff? And that relates in part to a question that is in the transition plan, because any IPR, that transition will only happen once. There will only be outgoing IPR staff at the beginning of this process. It's not necessarily an ongoing question. So there was a proposal made to move that, and you can see it gets moved down in this to under transition details, under transition plan broader system, which is the 5th phase of work, the one that comes up right after this one. So what the commission is being asked to do is essentially take that question and put it into the next phase of work along with all the other transition questions. The other 2 changes in the document, one of them is simply codifying existing practice, which is to say that the areas of agreement include staff, office, bureau, and budget questions. That's all under the same subcommittee right now. And so just noting that it's all in a single document, which is existing practice, just putting that into writing. And then the last question is just updating our language in all of the other documentation of the commission. The phrase stakeholders has not been used and instead been replaced with experts and affected parties. So that's just a wording change right here. I'd say the big change in this proposal is moving will existing staff get preference to apply out of this phase of works oversight staff subcommittee and its charge and into the next phase of work in the transition plan. Yeah, is that any questions on what the proposal here is, or pass it over to co-chairs to talk about it, or the open discussion on it, I suppose, potentially. Okay, so I'll pass it back over, I guess, to Victoria if you'd like to, and I'm happy to scroll around as needed.
Thank you. And will the co-chairs want to say something about it from this document?
So I think that we reviewed these changes and thought they made sense. So they're being presented as changes that we thought were appropriate. And we're just looking for feedback from the full commission on these changes. There are changes, sort of a combination, as Samir said, of things that have come out of the subcommittees and then just other changes to make this document consistent with some of our underlying documents.
Thank you. And Co-Chair Catherine, then we can is there any discussion, any questions? Otherwise, I can move to ask the questions for the changes. Do we need to ask the question for the changes? Each part?
No. I think because it's a move of text from one place, it's not really a deletion and an addition. So yeah. This is a this vote, just to clarify what it would do, it would order the items differently. And so this question about will existing staff get preference to apply would be reached in the next phase of work as opposed to in the current one. That would be the impact of it. There's a proposed agreements document that explains that. So I'll move into asking the questions. Is there any strong opposition to the track changes in this document and the proposed changes to the agenda and scope? Is there general agreement to making those changes? Great, thank you so much. Seeing consensus, we'll get that uploaded back to the website. And if I can just quickly take, since I have the floor, to answer the question raised earlier. If you go to the key documents page on the website, the documents that just says documents, everything is in there, but there are probably over 1,000 documents now of the commission. And it's just a big repository. So hunting for the thing you're looking for might take a long time, and definitely don't advise that. But if you're looking for a decision of the PAC, for example, this decision that was just made, if you go to key documents, which is its own link, everything's in there, or in decisions of the PAC, which is a subcategory of that one. So, and there are a couple of things missing up there right now. For example, this agenda and scope, and the flow charts being revised, for example, but that is where to look. I'll pass it back over to Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is approve potential agreement on the next item on the agenda is go to the garden plot recap. And this is the time for facilitators, co-chair, and staff to summarize any items already brought up today which didn't fit into today's agenda. We'll recap those items here and use them in developing future agendas. We won't be using this time to add new items not previously mentioned or to discuss any items, but we will use this list to develop future agendas so these items can be addressed. And I will pass it first to Dr. Moses for if you want, oh, sorry, I will pass it first to co-chairs and then to Dr. Moses and then to staff if they have items for the garden club.
Nothing for me.
Thank you. Dr. Moses?
I have one, and it was from Commissioner Dan, a suggestion to include data from the current system in the new system reports.
Thank you. Now I will pass it for the staff.
The only item I had is the one that Dr. Moses just mentioned, and just to flag that would be something that would go into the transition plan phase. So it would probably end up, it would be in the phase of work that's coming up next, transition plan and broader system, and would probably be part of the transition plan portion of that work. But that's up to the commission when we do the ordering of the work in the future. And hopefully in the next meeting of the full commission, we'll start the process of developing, getting member feedback on the proposed work plan for the 5th phase of work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Then, as a reminder, you can now submit advanced public comment to the Police Accountability Commission via web form, voicemail, or postal mail. Thank you to all of the members who attended today's meeting and for your contributions today. Thank you also to the interpreters. Finally, thank you to all the members of the community for attending to this meeting. If you're not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting of the PAC will include a briefing with City Commissioner Rene Gonzalez, and it is going to be on Thursday, April 13th. Now it is 8:54 and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.